The materialists I met in science, their worldview dovetailed just so conveniently with folks like Jeffrey Epstein, who really love funding the materialists. Why? Because he loves to say,
welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
100%. So I want to start off by defining terms a little bit.
Sure.
When you say team human, what does that mean precisely?
Team human? Well, I actually came up with the phrase team human when I was on a panel with this guy, Ray Kurzweil. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's one of the chief technologists at Google. And he believes that human beings are going to really need to pass the evolutionary torch to our digital successors. That human evolution has reached its peak, that machines, and in some ways he's right, machines soon may have greater processing power than people, and they'll be smarter than people. And if they become conscious, as he believes they will, then they are the superior life form, like the next evolved,
right.
And that human beings need to pass the evolutionary torch to the computers and accept that, we may need to stick around, as long as the computers need us to keep the lights on, and then accept our inevitable extinction and let them continue on through the heavens.
Into the good
right.
night.
So and I said, no, I think that we should keep humans around. Even if computers are smarter, human beings are special, right? We can live in liminal spaces. A human being can watch a David Lynch movie and not understand what it means, but still experience that as pleasure. What is that? That there's something special, and that we should reserve a place for humans in the digital future. And he said, oh, Rushkoff, you're just saying that because you're human. Right? Like it's hubris. And then I said, fine, I'm on team human, guilty. And all I really meant by team human is that human beings are special. We have a role. We have, consciousness and an awareness and some value other than our kind of utility value to the market.
So I 100% agree with this, but I'm gonna push you a little bit.
Sure.
Why are you so convinced that human beings have value beyond processing power? Because, there's an awful lot of, rationalists out there who think free will isn't real, and we're essentially organic computers. So do you need to have something like a religious worldview to believe human beings are inherently special and valuable beyond utility? Or do you get to that solution? Do you get to that conclusion some other way?
Well, I mean, there's, a couple of 100 years of good philosophy on this, I guess, ending with, Wittgenstein or somebody, that, different groups of people create meaning systems together. And there are people who are working on the assumption that we live in an evidence-based materialist reality, and that's all there is. And if you start with that assumption, you can begin trying to explain our world in terms of how the atoms are moving and how different pieces of energy are affecting them. You can start with other underlying assumptions. So there's a lot of physicists who would say, time is not the effect of the big boom, but rather time was passing before the big boom. In other words, that time precedes matter rather than matter coming before time. It just depends on how you start things. So, I don't think you need a religion. You don't need a God in order to believe that there's some meaning or that consciousness may have preceded matter. You just need to be open-minded. I mean, this is part of what, I love Robert Anton Wilson's work in this regard, in that there's a lot of different reality tunnels we can use to understand the world. And oddly enough, most of them are pretty incompatible with each other, right?
Yeah.
So I try to say, no, I'm not like a staunch believer in one or the other, but I'm open to the possibility, there might be nothing. We might just be some advanced, fungus on a rock hurling through cold and meaningless space, and that the thing we think is consciousness is just an illusion perpetrated by DNA on these animals so that we carry around a bunch of bacteria. That's possible. It's also possible that human beings are sacred. That was sort of what, and I guess it is a religion. It's what Judaism was kind of invented to do, was to give people this idea of Sabbath, that you take sort of one day a week and you don't work, you don't produce, you don't consume,
Right.
and you
That
just kind
human
of,
beings are made in the image of God and are inherently valuable. Like,
yeah, or even if without God, that we're just inherently valuable. Back to, Mr. Rogers, you're special just the way you are,
yes, yes.
and it's a nice, I like the experience of love, say, and I don't, I prefer not to relegate it entirely to, reproductive needs and all that,
Yeah.
there's, I've had experiences of awe, when you look at a canyon or a mountain and go, and you feel connected to something greater than yourself. You take mushrooms, you take ayahuasca, take acid, and you start to see that, oh, things are connected. It's both a diminishment of the self, which is kind of why I call it team human or team nature. It's not about, the Vitruvian man, I am the great individual, I am the human, that sort of humanism of the Renaissance or humanism of the Greeks. It's not that. It's more, you kind of disappear and experience meaning that way when I do anyway. So it's not like an ego thing. It's kind of the opposite.
Sure. Well, so I guess my question.
And the thing was, and this is why I wrote this book, and the materialists I met in science, their worldview dovetailed just so conveniently with folks like Jeffrey Epstein, who really love funding the materialists. Why? Because he loves to say, we are just genes. The object of the game is to spread your genes, whatever they call the new thing, spermato, whatever that philosophy. The idea is you're supposed to spread your sperm as far as possible. That's what Elon Musk believes. Just make as many kids because genes, material. Yes, genes. Yes, you impregnate. So that's why Jeffrey Epstein had dormitories for teenage girls. What he wanted to do was seed dozens and dozens of women with him. Because if you're in a meaningless universe, if you buy the kind of Richard Dawkins, all we're here for is selfish genes, then you don't need any morals. Everybody else is just meat,
Right. So this is the first I'm hearing about that, this being something that Elon Musk believes. Because, I'm going to be perfectly transparent. I'm like 75% positive on Elon Musk in terms of like how I feel about the guy. I mean, I guess it would explain his like personal like history. So is this really something he believes? Does he really think that?
Yeah, just, I mean, read up on him, read some of the interviews. Look at, what's it called? Spermata. Someone in the crowd will know the philosophy. It has sperm in it. And the ideas, and it's part of the same as, the effective altruists have the same understanding of humanity, that people alive today are like the larval stage of humans, kind of like maggots are to flies. We're not fully developed, like Pokemon before he evolves. So the 8 billion people on the planet now really don't matter compared to the trillions of post-humans that will spread through the heavens later.
But like,
so their idea is
who, right?
What?
According to who, though, right? Like, who
according to the effective altruists like Musk and Thiel and what's his face, the crypto kid, is Sam Bankman-Fried, and the philosophers that they all subscribe to. That's their understanding of the world. And that's why you got to understand. And it's not to say it's evil. Like you say, it's just a worldview. It's a very materialist worldview where they think of, humanity as like an ant colony that's destined to go extinct. So you need to get some flying ants to other places, even if they're computer ants, to continue whatever this is. I just don't know that, robots programmed with human, culture, that the next chat GPT 9 on Mars may not be fully conscious. It may not be enough. Right. I would rather try to keep this civilization going. I don't think we have to sacrifice it.
Well, I would prefer for this civilization to keep going too. I was gonna get to like the next big one, but you've raised a different question to me. Would you be against trying to get organic ants to other planets just to make the species more resilient? So something takes out Earth, we have other organic ants.
Yeah, if I had a choice, I would rather send bugs and ideally mushrooms, to other planets than robots. Yeah, I think.
Sure, but what about humans? I mean,
good luck. Really good luck. It's like no matter what we do to the Earth, however bad our nuclear climate disaster is, it will still be a more hospitable place to carbon-based life than any planet we can currently get to.
I mean, I'm when I think of the utility of putting humans on other planets, you're right. I don't think about nuclear climate destroy. I kind of think about like the asteroid, I suppose, but maybe even that is still easier than Mars.
Oh, the asteroid, I'd rather shoot it with the new thing they got, the asteroid shooting gun. I'm a NASA person. I love space exploration. I loved space exploration even more as a collective human activity.
Right.
I know that, yes, it's great. Bezos got into space, and I saw everybody cheered. It was a big thing. So what did that show? That one dude can do what we could do collectively 60 years ago. In 60, we went to the moon 60 years ago or 50 years ago. So as a group of people with that technology, we were able to do that. So I'm way more interested in kind of cooperative space travel than private enterprise space travel. But space is cool. It's all good. I don't think it should keep our eyes off the game of keeping this planet sustainable. I don't think we'll get an escape hatch in time, but it's all good.
I tend to agree with that. I don't think we should think about it as an escape hatch. So I definitely agree with that. Space tourism, though, that's privatized. Is that a waste of our time?
Well, I think if they could do it with like a drone or something easy, they blow a lot of gas and energy. You talk about a first class trip to Paris uses God knows how much, how many African people would have enough heating oil for a year based on, one first class flight to Paris. I'm sure a first class flight to, the moon station Hilton is like not an efficient
ungodly
leisure sport.
Right. Then you get into the whole economic side of things, but I wanted to come back to the idea of anti-human technology growth.
Right.
So aside from, people who are making the purely evolutionary argument that we need to step aside, I'm not sure how many of those people really exist. Do you see, when you say we're creating technology that is anti-human, not conducive with human flourishing, what do you mean? Are these like...
Well, first of all, you're saying people don't exist. You're 80% in favor, so you're on record, right?
No, I said there's not very many. Right, is what I said. Yeah. My understanding, but the reason I'm an interviewer is because I don't know anything, and I want you
to fair enough. Fair enough. I don't think he's evil either. I think he means well. I think he believes all this. I really do. I just think it's like that's not going to end up being a productive pursuit. That said, his earlier work I'm really into. Did you give I gave the $200 to get those friggin' solar, the solar roof tile thing. I never saw my solar roof tiles. What did they do with that money? I signed up for that. But some of those things, trying to change us to electric vehicles, although there's a lot of problems with that, it's still
Starlink was very successful as well.
Yeah, some of these things are great ideas. Whether he's building them or just recognizing them and getting them funded or marketing them. I remember in the 80s and the early 90s, I was part of all these projects, even government projects. We're looking at how are we going to get people to drive electric cars? All the men think that they're feminine. And, it was sort of that Jimmy Carter thing where people looked at the idea of electric cars as weak and not masculine and we'll never get. Elon Musk single-handedly made electric cars cool, right? And that's, he was a good marketer. Now, macho people will want a Tesla and think, it's sort of, and he, in some ways, by being all kind of Trumpy MAGA, it's associated a little bit with a certain kind of machismo. So he's done very, positive things. So I'm not, anti-Musk or anything. I'm just saying that his actual philosophy of life and evolution and our future, like Sam Bankman-Fried or like Peter Thiel, doesn't look at human beings as quite intrinsically sacred. It looks at certain human beings as sacred and other ones as well as meat.
So how do you see this manifesting in our technology?
Well, Mainly that we reversed the polarity of technology. And this was really by the early 90s. I mean, when I was first using these technologies, I mean, I was called a cyberpunk. The idea was that we were going to use these technologies to kind of empower people, that you would have in your own home with a laptop, you had as much technology as a newsroom had in the 70s or 80s, and that we could connect and see things, and then with video, that this would be empowering to the masses in a major way, so that we were thinking about digital technology as, how is it going to help us realize the potential of the unbridled collective human imagination. And then, by the early 90s, Wired magazine came along and said, no, that's not the story here. It's not this weird consciousness expanding story that you're reading about in Mondo 2000 magazine and these other kind of countercultural things. No, the internet is a business story. The internet is going to save the NASDAQ stock exchange, that we're going to have something called a long boom, which means the stock market is going to grow exponentially forever, thanks to digital technology. And what happened then was, as Wall Street came into digital, they didn't really care so much about what are the possibilities of this technology. Because they were betting money on different kinds of futures, now they wanted to increase the probability that their bets worked out. Right? Wired magazine said we're living in an attention economy. And over the next 8 years, Ritalin prescriptions went up by 4,000%, right? We're in an attention economy. So now we're going to make sticky websites and try to control human attention. So we reversed the technologies. Instead of thinking of these things as tools for people to do weird stuff, we started to think of them as tools to use on people to get them to do predictable stuff. So we started to look at the internet more like a Skinner box, a means of behavioral control. How do we get people to buy more stuff in less time, to think less weird stuff, and to accelerate
in some cases, make them think about more weird stuff. Although predictably weird, I suppose.
Right, maybe predictably weird. Right. In other words, by the 2010s or 2020s, extremist stuff that activates them, to whatever it takes to create that engagement that's going to, generate more data that we can sell. But my problem is the way that this is why I wrote a book called Program or Be Programmed in 2010. The idea that we have to understand how these technologies work, or they're going to be worked on us. And for most of us, the experience of tech is someone we don't know doing something to us with an algorithm or an AI or an interface, and influencing our ideas or our understandings of the world or our behavior or our emotions, making us feel different ways about things, rather than really giving us, the keys to daddy's car and letting us build what we want.
So this has always been a bugaboo for me, which is, we're saying that we're making people do like certain things or do certain things. And obviously you can influence human behavior to an extent, but at the end of the day, free will does exist, right? So, and you kind of have to think that if you're going with the humans are inherently special route, as I tend to. Mm-hmm. So how do you draw the line between these people are being preyed upon, and their technology outside of their understanding is making them do things, and the other interpretation, which is human beings have free will, the internet is providing them things that they didn't know they wanted. Targeted advertising just means that they're seeing stuff they care about more often. This is, when I watched The Social Dilemma, I thought it was true. For those of you who don't know, The Social Dilemma is a very good documentary about social media. And I'm like, well, sure, they're targeting them with ads to make them click longer, but also these are the ads they actually want to see. These are the ones they're interested in.
Social Dilemma bothered me as a movie because because it was so much about and by the guys who think of themselves as the masters of the universe, who can use social media and get anybody to do anything, that they were overstating their abilities just a bit. Right. We had, exactly. We had the Tea Party movement before MAGA, right? Before social media ever existed, there was a Tea Party of crazy people saying crazy things about, government is evil. There were Tea Party people at the town hall meetings in my town. Guys would get up and say, wait a minute, I don't have any kids in the school system. Why do I have to pay a school tax? Right? Not understanding just the basics of That's called a public library. We all pay in, and anyone, that's how civics work, right? There was already crazy. So the internet did not do that to people, right? At all. You're absolutely right. But the fact is, we live in a world with many different potentials. So some people join a cult and do crazy shit, right? They join a cult, they join the Nazis, they join the MAGA, they join, they commit suicide, they do all sorts of stuff. Now, some people do that, some people don't. Some people are more susceptible to manipulation, others aren't. But what the technology companies are doing is taking the very best things we know, the most advanced things we know about a field called behavioral finance. Right? Behavioral finance is what credit card companies do to get us to buy more stuff than we want, or to sign up for credit cards where it looks like the interest is lower, but the interest is actually higher. They understand all these different biases that we have about money, and they leverage those biases to get us to make decisions that are against our best interests. Right? Social media companies take the algorithms from slot machines, Las Vegas slot machines, and use them in the reward dynamics of social media feeds in order to addict us to a social media feed. Will all of us be addicted? No. Will all of us be a little bit affected? Yes. And the question is not, are we passive drones who will be completely dominated by these things, or are we completely autonomous beings who are impervious to manipulation? But we're all somewhere on a spectrum of people. Some of us will get, convinced through Gamergate to become a Bannon fanatic and storm the Capitol. Others of us will have the opposite, the opposite reaction and become an extremist, a paranoid social justice warrior and do crazy things on that end. I mean, any of us can be kind of driven crazy by these technologies and the way we use them, which is why all I'm here to say is look at the folks who are making this stuff. Look at what they believe about the world. Look at the people who are making AI today believe that AI is going to destroy humanity, right? That's right. What they believe. That's why they signed a document.
Musk has warned against that, right? If I seem to remember. I see lots of YouTube thumbnails about Elon Musk saying, don't do it, guys. Don't make the AI.
Right. Yeah, he's the one investing in. He's the main investor in the primary investor in ChatGPT before Microsoft bought it. So, right. I mean, on the one hand, he's saying that. On the other hand, it's almost like an advertisement for AI. It's the same as the Social Dilemma guy saying, "Oh, our AI is so powerful; it's going to take over humanity if you don't watch out." That feels as much like an advertisement as a warning.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know. You're kind of convincing me to just want to become Amish. Like, I think you can just separate. I mean, I know that's not what you're saying.
Yeah.
You have to strike.
Yeah, it's not a terrible idea. I mean, the Amish, the interesting thing is the Amish don't reject technology. They just test it out for a while. They do adopt a heck of a lot of technologies. They just sort of evaluate its impact. I mean, and while we maybe can't do that, we certainly, there's a lot we can learn from the Amish, from indigenous people, from people who understand the cycles of life. In the West, for better and for worse, we have a very linear understanding of time and progress, right? We're going to keep going west, build more stuff, grow the economy, GDP, more. And what that negates is the more circular possibilities, that things do have patterns. There are seasons. There are the natural rhythms of nature. We shouldn't feel obligated to grow. And the only reason we do feel obligated to grow is because of a banking, a banking idea that was developed in the late Middle Ages. It's this idea of central currency, interest-bearing central currency. It was invented around 1100 AD, and it was invented by monarchs who were upset by the rise of the middle class. We were all using all different kinds of local currencies that had no interest, that would expire at the end of the day. We were trading, we were getting rich, we were working 3 days a week. Women were taller in Europe in the 1100s they were at any time until the 1980s. We didn't catch up. with them. That's how healthy these people were. But the problem was, as the people got rich, the aristocracy got poor. So they came up with central currency. They financialized our world. They said, you're not allowed to trade with each other unless you borrow money from the central treasury at interest. So in order for you and me to interact, we had to pay interest to some foreign banker, to some central, to the king, to the monarch, to the bankers. And that's the way we still are today. When even the president says, oh, the economy is only growing by this, it's got to grow by 3% GDP every year. That's not because the economy has to grow for any real reason. The Joe is making enough pizza. Everybody's eating pizza. Why does Joe's Pizzeria have to grow? Because he's got to pay the bank, because we've got to grow the economy. And that's where we're kind of lost.
Well, is that really true? Is there not something within humans inherently that makes us want to do more, reach higher, understand better, create more? Like, is that?
Yeah, but we can understanding better doesn't necessarily mean everyone on the same block having their own lawnmower. Right? There are many civilizations. I mean, most of them have been destroyed by militaristic ones like ours, but there are many civilizations where their growth was not in the volume of consumption they did, but their growth was in their understanding of the world. And that's very different. You can have lots of different kinds of progress. It's just our sort of progress is colonial. It's about conquest. It's about material gain. Again, materialism is going to be material gain.
Well, I think that, I suppose in my ideal world, you'd be able to separate those two things, right? Like, I am very happy with the idea of growing GDP and ever more products being created, but I do not like the cultural focus that has created, as if the growth of products is the only thing that's important. And I wonder if it's even possible to separate those things.
It is. I mean, the interesting thing is when I tell people, look, what if we had one or two lawnmowers on our block instead of one in every house, and you borrow them from your neighbors?
That takes an awful lot of social fabric. That takes an awful lot of.
Oh my God! So much. That's difficult.
No. But by today's standards,
yes, by today's standards, exactly. Right. You got to drill a hole, and you got to put a hole in your wall. What are you going to do? You're going to go to Home Depot, get a minimum viable product drill, use it once or twice, and then it's going to break. You're going to leave it in the garage. You're going to take a bunch of toxic metal that some poor enslaved kid went to get the cobalt for it, to make your drill. Then you're going to throw it in another toxic waste dump. All because you can't go to your neighbor's house, go to Bob and borrow a fucking drill from Bob. Bob, can I borrow your drill? Sure, you can borrow my drill. Here it is. Now, the problem is Bob's going to want to come over then. Hey, did you like the drill? What are you doing on Christmas Eve? Now you're going to have to be friends with Bob. Oh, no, I have friends. Right. And then and what if we're all borrowing each other's drills? What happens to the drill company? How's the drill company going to sell more drills this year than last year if everybody's just sharing drills with each other? Oh, my God. Right. The drill company, you made enough drills. Now people can work 3 days a week instead of 5 days a week because we have enough drills right now. It's like, get over this idea that we have to have human beings serve the economy. It's the same as human beings serving the machines rather than the machines serving us. Sure.
So how do you get there? I guess would be my question for you. And this is like a huge question that nobody really knows, but I am curious. How do we get to the point where we reorient our understandings to have the economy serve humanity, or the machines serve humanity, not the other way around, without doing the overly reactionary thing where we destroy the machines and destroy our productive capacity and say all it's bad? Like, how do you? Because I know most people who say what you say are also like very staunch anti-capitalists, and I don't get that from you. So I'm curious, how do you square that circle? I mean, to me, I think you just need a renaissance of traditional cultural values to take hold. But that's a very...
Yeah, I would go there, right? Rather than attacking the machines, right? I didn't write a book called, Anti-Machine. I wrote a book called Team Human. What you do is what you're saying. You try to have a renaissance, literally, and it's a great word, not a revolution. A renaissance means a rebirth of old values in a new context. Right. So, yes, you retrieve human values, especially the ones that were squished in the last Renaissance. The commons, magic, paganism, psychedelics, women, nature, collaboration.
Paganism is debatable, but the other ones, okay.
No, paganism's fun. Fun. I mean, you mix it in with everything else. No, it is. I mean, all paganism is an understanding the forces of nature as having personalities. It's kind of a fun, sort of a fun way of seeing. But no, not everyone has to take psychedelics. Not everyone has to become pagan. I'm saying you retrieve the things that are that have been lost. You retrieve the stuff. Right. We've got the materialism thing. We've got down. Right.
Right.
We got the Francis Bacon
really
materialism.
do.
Capitalism, we got down. We got it. We understand. Good.
The
Capitalism
standard of living is just absolutely miraculous, right? We
got that one down, but we missed up a lot of other stuff, right? In order to increase our personal standard of living, we kind of destroyed the planet. We kind of enslaved a lot of people. We kind of have huge inequality. So now we got to look at, okay, there's all these people in Pakistan that are up to their waist in water because of climate change. We're going to have mass refugees. We got a lot of stuff, other stuff we can start thinking about. But yeah, that's why I think the subtle way to do it is to reacquaint people with the joy of being alive. That's why I call it Team Human, but not just human, but being an animal, being social, those little things. Right. So if you get people like
a cup of sugar, it's okay.
Yeah. Get them to have, just sex 5 minutes a day, right? Or look in someone's eyes for 5 minutes a day, or experience other people. Just start waking up other sensibilities besides the sort of more Ferengi, acquisition, Ferengis, it's from Star Trek, but other than acquisition, then you start waking up other sensibilities. How do you have fun? Oh, I have fun by buying more stuff at Best Buy. Okay. How I have fun is taking a walk with a friend. Why don't you come try that one? And it's like, ooh, this is fun. But when you take a walk with a friend, all of a sudden you're an enemy of the market, right? You're not buying anything. You're not selling anything. You're not online.
But we need to have disciplined consumers, right? You need, the consumer base has to be disciplined. They have to have disciplined votes with their dollar. But like you said, when we're turning the screws of our technology and internet on people to make them, our advanced advertising and stuff like that, it's just hard. And, like you said, we gotta have a cultural shift so that becomes normal.
Yeah, look, North Squatch just said it in the 1950s, Norbert Wiener era. This is Norbert Wiener wrote a book on cybernetics. We wanted to make robots to free us from work. And what he recognized was that if the robots start doing all the work, we're going to have to change our economic model, right? If the robots start doing all the work, then how do you justify letting people have stuff? Right now, the reason why you need a job is not because there's some piece of work that has to be done, right? They will invent a piece of plastic for you to make so you can have a job. You need a job so we can justify letting you participate in the spoils of industrial capitalism, right? If we flip that back,
that's true to some extent.
No, to a big extent. We are tearing down houses. We are burning food every week. We are tearing down houses and burning food. Why? Because they're extra. They're in abundance. We can't just let people have it. And that's a function of an economic model that's not serving us in this moment of abundance.
Well, I don't know enough, but I imagine that there are an awful lot of jobs that are necessary. And then you get into the economic problems of something like UBI. So you have to, again, you just have to be careful there.
Yeah, there are jobs that are necessary, but we got to look at what those really are. And the interesting thing is we think those are jobs that people don't want, like manual growing of food on organic permaculture farms, say. Oh, that's labor intensive. We want to use industrial agriculture and big machines and Caterpillar computers and whatever to do that. Then you look at a rich person when they retire. What are rich people when they retire? What do? They make craft beer. They start organic gardens. It's like, wait a minute. The stuff that we thought no one wants to do is what the wealthiest people in the world do when they retire. So maybe we need to sort of rethink but yeah, there is labor that needs to be done. Agriculture is more labor intensive than we currently give it credit for. And because we're doing it through industrial means, we're destroying the topsoil really quickly. If we did a more labor intensive form of agriculture, we'd be a lot better off.
Right. So we have I'm going to go to callers here. Oh, Gator just bowed out. Oh, well. Sorry, we had a caller waiting and he just left. Okay, Hannah is calling in. And yep. Hannah, you get like a minute and a half to ask a question. Ask your question. You'll answer. It'll be a good time. Happy to have you on the show.
Very nice to meet you, Mr. Douglas. Very cool discussion, man. I'm wondering what you think about a political party that focuses on solving universal basic needs like free water, free clean water, free organic food, free housing, free electricity, free communications. Then at that point, with all those things taken care of, healthcare would already be drastically lower. The cost of healthcare would be drastically lowered at that point. You could eliminate the insurance middlemen, and it's just we would have so much money left over at that point that we could actually invest in technology that actually cures us and keeps us healthy and functional. And so, yeah, I think that's a good idea. We could use your help, man. I'm building a platform right now. And so what would you add to that platform of a new political party that's trying to accomplish all the universal basic needs?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know how political parties really, I don't understand fully how they work, because I don't. And I see, I think there's like parties, and then there's like parties that are used to sort of push a different party. Like there's this party in New York called like Working Families Party, and they're basically Democrats, but they're like a Democratic faction that tries to influence the main Democrats by pulling them in a certain direction. I would certainly be part of a political party that did what you're saying. And I do like the idea of, the word's been taken over by Silicon Valley, but almost like a wellness party, it's like, it's what you're talking about is like, if we were all well, the economic inequality and environmental pollution leads to all of these problems and expenses that wouldn't be there. Healthcare, you're right. Healthcare would not be such a big issue if we didn't have this economic inequality issue. If we didn't have, if we didn't have climate problems, if we didn't have industrial agriculture. So I guess a party that looked at systems is really what you're talking about, that looked at how to do systems change in order to affect cultural and policy change are really what you're talking about. And I've thought about this a lot is what if we do stuff rather than trying to go right to the core, the core issues like healthcare or corporatism or this, what if we relieve the stress on those things, right? So if people didn't need as much healthcare, then the healthcare problem is going to be a lot easier to solve, right? If people were supported by their communities rather than needing retirement care and welfare and old age homes, then we wouldn't need to worry as much. The issue would be small. It would deflate by itself. So I do like that. I don't know how the political parties do it. And I don't know whether a political party is the better way to do it than some kind of these two parties are so entrenched. It's so hard to break
them. The word
them.
that I like to use is proxy party. So honestly, my goal is I'm not even really worried about getting elected. What I'm more interested in is creating a network of mutual aid that is so efficient outside of the
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I'd be there. I'm with you. And that's the way to do it because people, they don't understand what mutual aid is. They think mutual aid is socialism, right? They think it's a top-down management of everybody's needs, and it's not. Mutual aid is it's back to, what do you need? Oh my God, Joe is sick. Hey, go. Let's start a meal train. It's as simple as that. So That's why all my writing, all I'm trying to do these days is get people to consider doing favors or accepting favors from their neighbors as ways to just engender a mindset of mutual aid, and then hopefully that would extend to other things. But yeah, I think the way to do it is by creating circumstances where those behaviors are easier to do and less taboo.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, be nice. Exactly. It's like, duh.
Yeah.
It's back to Sesame Street, right?
Yeah. No, seriously. Like, the thing though is the problem with the mutual aid thing is that, as you said, I think it has to be bottom up, right? You can't really impose this mindset shift from above. It's hard to imagine like one of the political parties running on this, right? Because it's not something like the federal government can really do. Maybe a local government could, but
Yeah, it's funny. You know who used to talk? It's back. It's fine. I've been reading about Jimmy Carter lately, because he's dying and stuff. And this guy, Jonathan Alter, wrote a book about Jimmy Carter. And you look at the speeches this guy made, and he's talking like he was talking then like we are. He's like, look, your personal wealth isn't as important as your neighbors, and we've got to work together, and we can be, it was just like, he got it. He really, I mean, I'm sure he had his problems. He was in the military.
Jimmy Carter's administration had its problems for sure.
I'm sure it did, whatever, but you look at what the man was saying, and it was like, oh, fuck. He was actually kind of talking, well, it was Nixon that introduced universal basic income.
Right.
And it's like, oh, wow. So even he got it. So people understood it was where we would have to go at the end of an industrialized society.
Right. I would say, though, this is maybe this is my evil capitalist coming out. So just bear with me. I think that in this reality where we defocus on serving the economy, I think we have to be careful we don't overdo it, because we are in an age of abundance here. But we always have to remember that this age of abundance is a very fragile miracle. So when we're making adjustments to the current order, maybe this is just a temperamental thing, is that we have to be extremely cautious with what jobs we say aren't important or which incentives we change, because that amount of abundance can
because the giant crazy mechanized economy that you're talking about is extremely brittle, right? Yeah. It's these long supply chains, right? Now, how you get shrimp to eat? They fish for the shrimp in the Gulf of Mexico. They put it on boats. They send it to Thailand where it's deshelled, then put it on planes and fly it back to the United States. It's like,
it's cheaper that way. By some miracle,
by some metrics, it's cheaper. By a whole lot of other metrics, it's actually just externalizing the cost to slave labor and other people.
But it's cheaper to the consumer at the end of the day.
It's brittle. It's brittle. To the consumer, as long as he's consumer and the company doesn't have to pay for the externalized harm that's actually being done to the consumer and everyone in the long run. But if we're going to, rather than saying, oh, I'm going to make some rule and dismantle this or dismantle that, that's not what I'm asking for. And what people are suggesting here is no. What we do is from the bottom up, rebuild the resiliency of local systems that takes the pressure off these fragile, brittle, dangerously complex supply chains. So the less we're relying on them, then the less dangerous it will be to make these adjustments slowly over time.
The other thing is I've talked about this a ton.
Yes, maintained by violence and subversion of brown people's freedom. Yes,
to some extent, yes, obviously. But the other thing is that if you do it bottom up and it's organic and by nature slow, it's also less likely to mess up what we have, right? If, you can see big, thick-fingered, clumsy governments saying, I want to fix this thing, so I'm going to radically invert this incentive over here in the course of a month. You could destroy everything. But if there's just a groundswell of consumers deciding, I am willing to pay more money, so this is organic, or I am willing to borrow a drill, then you are going to more likely get the benefits you want without completely destroying the systems that led to the abundance in the first place. But that's not very satisfying, because you can't vote for that. Exactly.
Oh, it's more satisfying, though, because you can just do it, and it doesn't matter who you voted for. You just do it. The problem is, as we start to do it, they, meaning government or whoever, will start to regulate against it. It's going to get harder. You'll find, oh, wait a minute, all these people are starting local community farms. Well, now there's a new regulation where you've got to have an 8310CB form in order to have a local farm, and that's going to cost $400,000, and you're going to have to get regulated by this. They're going to make rules. So where the fight will eventually come is as local people try to take control. I know there's a community-supported agriculture farm in New York that has land that has been regulated for corn by the corn industry. They're not allowed to grow Swiss chard or broccoli or what they need on that land because there's a corn subsidy on it and it can't be changed. That's where the battles are now, is the local companies, local growers against big agro that has a obviously shareholder invested interest in preventing the kinds of things we're talking about.
So does Big Agro own that particular land, or
no? They regulate. They own the regulations.
With the private industry, see, this is the other thing. It's that the extent to which the government is in bed with the companies is just disgusting. it's a complete Frankenstein's monster. It inverts all of the incentives that a private market would have. It's very gross. So
Right. And you see, it always happens. It's like, oh, the head of the FDA is the former head of General Foods or something. It's like, wait a minute.
why?
What happened?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we got 2 more callers coming in hot. Adolf with the beard. How you doing, man? Welcome to the show. Ask your question.
How's it going, John? Thanks for having me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Loud and clear, buddy.
Thank you for having me. Good talk. Interesting stuff. I have a question for Douglas. Oh, it looks like he's away.
I'm just closing my shade. It got too bright in my face.
All good, all good. So the question was, you had mentioned a little bit further back, you said Elon Musk is making electric vehicles cool for the masculine type people. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen. In fact, I've seen more of the opposite. I've seen a lot of the what you would call the toxic masculine people. I hate using that term, but I use it just for ease of communication. Just crapping all over the electric car industry and just all this green energy stuff. What are your thoughts on that? Like, what have you been seeing in this regard?
Well, it's really tricky because it's gone back and forth and back and forth. I mean, I guess most generally what I meant was there was a huge, I mean, there were, tens or hundreds of millions of dollars being spent by the U.S. government on trying to bring in people like me. They didn't give me cash, but they, flew me to DC to like, how do we make electric cars cool with Americans? Nobody wants them and we want to switch because it's our, to make the environment better. What do? We're giving subsidies. We're doing this, and people don't want them. And no one was really, there were all these like smart people from different advertising agencies and all that trying to do whatever it was. And somehow Elon Musk's caught on. Right. And yeah, it was with a certain kind of guy. It was a sort of Silicon Valley, tech bro sort or something. It wasn't like, and then, I mean, he did that. And then the next was Ford, Ford with the F-100, the aluminum F-100 electric truck.
Yep, I've seen it.
Which is super popular, even with, kind of red statey guys. Because it's, and I think what he did, what Musk did was by making that car fast, it was really fast. It would go fast. They did these things where they took like a Dodge Charger with the special engine in it, and put it next to and it went faster than that.
They did the stunt where they put a Ford F-150 and they hooked it up to the Tesla. Like they roped them together. And they drove in opposite directions, and the Tesla won. I remember that.
God, yeah, things like that. But all I'm saying is that Elon Musk is or certainly was a great visionary, and even if Tesla wasn't really his invention or the solar company wasn't really his, he somehow did, in the right place, in the right time, in the right way, he was able to popularize renewable technologies in ways that I hadn't seen anyone do that before. You saw like the Nissan Leaf was, the typical sort of, he's the little, right, he's my little car.
Hybrids, yeah, no.
Right. And he did something, whether it's long term, now that he's, with Twitter and it's just insanity. I think a lot of people don't want to be seen in a Tesla anymore. He's so identified himself with the brand that it's really hard, to back out of that now. But I think there's an acceptance for electric vehicles now, at least more so than there was before.
Awesome.
I know they're mining up. I know he's a blood diamonds and God knows what. Yeah, Musk started rich, just like Trump. I mean, these guys had, they had tens or hundreds of millions of dollars from the outset. They're not like self-made millionaires. But Musk did stuff that I couldn't do. He made a rocket ship company. I mean, I don't.
Like
I got my problem with Musk, but I'm not going to, deny that he had a certain communication ability that a lot of other people didn't.
Very good answers. And yeah, I'm no Musk or Trump simp. I don't really simp for people. I don't like doing that. It's better to think for yourself. And even if you support an idea, it's always good to be skeptical, even when you like what somebody has to say, because one day they might turn around and do something really stupid that you don't agree with, and then everyone's going to look at you like, why were you? Oh, well, you were supporting him the whole time. It's like, People are
Yeah.
human. Humans make mistakes, right?
Support people on a case-by-case basis. That's why I said 75%. I
Yeah.
appreciate
All right.
you.
Thank you so much, guys. Yep.
Sure. I mean, on the other hand, I don't believe the kinds of solutions that I see in Elon Musk or most of the kind of techno solutions come up with are new technological ways of doing the old thing. So it's like Bitcoin didn't solve for capitalism. Bitcoin was a new way of doing speculation. The electric vehicle is not a revolution in transportation. The electric vehicle lets us still drive around cars, which is stupid, right? The only reason we have to drive around cars in America, honestly, is because GM re-landscaped America. Right? We redesigned America so that people would need a car to get to work. People didn't need cars to get to work before. They had streetcars or they lived close enough to work. We designed the suburbs. It was read my book, Life Inc. This is not conspiracy theory. This is what happened under FDR. This is what Levittown was for. This is why GM CEO became the Secretary of Defense, was to build a highway system, so that people could be required to have cars. And it wasn't like that in the old days. You would work all day at the machine shop operating heavy machinery. Then you would be done with work. They'd blow the whistle. You'd get a beer, get on the streetcar, read your paper, drink your beer, and it would take you home. They had to convince us to say, oh, instead of having a beer and going on the streetcar, we want you to operate heavy machinery for another hour in order to get home and pay for the privilege and pay for insurance. So now we're at the point where most Americans work one day a week just to pay for their car, right? That was a bum deal. I would rather be on the streetcar drinking a beer, reading the newspaper.
Well, in urban areas, certainly. I mean, that's pretty obvious. I think, I don't know, I'm sympathetic to the idea that I get to independently decide where I go and have an awful lot of, ability to go very far just of my own volition. I think there's something to that. But in the urban areas, in the high density areas,
it's fun to have air conditioning. It's fun to have a McMansion. It's fun to have kind of freedom, oranges in New York in the dead of winter. But these fun things turn out are not really respecting the natural cycles of life. They're pushing against nature in ways that are unsustainable for the planet. And rather than figuring out how to make sure we get to keep those things, I'm at the place where I'm like, there's a lot of fun to be had without trying to do all that. I don't want to have to take speed to wake up in the morning and Klonopin to go to sleep at night. Right. Let me just return to a more natural cycle here.
Yeah, well, I definitely agree with the over-medicalized thing. And certainly the urban areas is a problem. I have two more things. One's a little thing. Is how do you feel about nuclear as the solution for our climate issues?
I'm not educated enough to really know. They fucked up so much nuclear, right? They did nuclear really bad when in Japan, when they built fucking Fukushima, and the elders, the ancients, they put rocks up there that said right where Fukushima is, right above it, that said, do not build below this point, right? In Japanese, don't do it, because the people who had been there for a very long time knew that the water comes up and bad shit happens. They put it there, and the modern ones, the modern architects, oh, that's old. We're better than that now. They put it there, and lo and behold,
I mean, like now the technology is advanced and it's very safe and incredibly efficient and
way better. No, I think we're gonna, we will probably have to go to nuclear, but I would hope that we would use nuclear as part of a winding down of energy consumption rather than as a way to support increased energy consumption. But yeah, I don't see another way out. Right. if another smooth way out than that.
Sure. I suppose the last thing I wanted to ask you is kind of the point I was touching on earlier, is that these solutions of, bottom up cultural shifts and stuff like that, while a politician can talk about them, you can't exactly set a policy to make that happen. You cannot vote in a federal election or in a public election to all of a sudden, I want more community-oriented neighborhoods. That has to come from. So the question is, how do you make it happen other than just enabling it, embodying it in your own life? Or is that really the only way?
Elected leaders, both local and national, can help engender that sort of spirit. They can make it easier for the local pizzeria to stay in business rather than get replaced by the Jamba Juice, right? They can, they can, how?
Yeah, well, how? Like, seriously, how? Because the consumers want what's cheap, right? And that's the consumer demand is what's going
No.
to...
The reason why the pizzeria has to leave is because the rent is going up. And the rent is going up because of certain monetary and fiscal policies. So they can help definancialize. They can make it harder for deregulated banks to really dominate the economy through financialization. Right? They can, I mean, we're in a place now where
you have to break that down.
All right. So, I mean, most simply, you and I want to transact.
Yeah.
Right? Financialization is someone says, all right, you're not allowed to transact unless you use our money and pay us to use our money. So now we're paying the bank to use their money. Then someone comes to the bank and says, oh, in order for you guys to give that money, we're going to have derivatives on your money. And someone else is going to have derivatives on those derivatives. So you end up with derivatives and abstract financial instruments dominating the on-the-ground economy. You know, the New York Stock Exchange
by taking away the power of centralized currency.
No, by making it by putting more regulation on the financialization, the meta markets, the abstracted markets that dominate our economy, and let us start support. I mean, they're already talking about getting rid of community banks because of Silicon Valley Bank, which is anything but a community bank.
Yeah,
right?
that is,
community banks and savings and loans and local money. And how do you keep money inside your community, right? How do you regulate so that, you know, Walmart's money is not, Walmart gets lower prices because they get their money cheaper. They put their prices lower than their competitors, and they lose money for a few years just so they can get everyone else out of business and then become the only, when was that fractal banking? Yeah. Oh God. I mean, yeah. But again, I mean, to make a long story short, banking regulation, regulation of ultra fast trading algorithms and ultra fast markets. You know, the derivatives exchange in 2013, the derivatives exchange purchased the New York Stock Exchange. Right. So the New York Stock Exchange, which is already an abstraction of the real economy, was consumed by its own abstraction. Right. That's because financial instruments are a bigger industry than industry.
Right.
Jack Welch, when he was running General Electric in 1980s, he said, you know, I make less money making and selling a washing machine than I do lending money to someone to buy a washing machine.
Right.
So he got out of the washing machine business. He sold those industries to the Chinese. And he became a bank, which worked really well until around 2007 when there was a crash. But that's what Harvard Business School is teaching. Get out of real business and go meta on business. Even Zuckerberg, he hates social media. I'm going to do meta, right? Go one level up.
But there's utility in that. So you say you want to, there's obviously a good thing that we have investments and that sort of thing, but we just need to scale it back is kind of what you're saying.
There's utility in that for people who don't want to work. Yeah. There's utility,
for the people who are getting the money lent to them too, right?
No, really not. Really not. I mean, there's a lot of other ways to start a business, and they call it magical. They call it bootstrapping now, named for the Baron von Munchausen, who used to be able to supposedly lift himself up by his own bootstraps, which is a magical act. But the magic of bootstrapping a business means you start a business with a small amount of money, then you use the revenue that you get from the business to grow the business slowly and naturally over time. So you don't take big, weird VC outside investment. So you don't have to have a home run. You don't need 1,000x returns. You know, Twitter, when Twitter was making $2 billion a year off a 140 character messaging app, it was considered an abject failure by Wall Street because it stopped growing. They were only making $2 billion a year. And I'm like, that should be enough for a 140 character messaging app. But it's not, because they had to keep growing. And that's the problem. The only reason they had to keep growing was not to feed their employees, right? They had to keep growing was to feed investors who wanted 1,000x returns.
But is it not the case that as they keep growing, they also get more employees and give people more work? And is that not a good thing? I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit right now, but
it's not. Growth for growth's sake is not. And that's why, and I wrote about this in a book called Life Inc., and again in Throwing Rocks at the Google Bus. That's why, actually the Pope came up with it, this idea called distributism. The idea is that a business should not have to grow for growth's sake. Joe should be allowed to open a pizzeria, a profitable pizzeria, and stay making pizza. If they want another pizzeria in the next town, Joe shouldn't have to then make another pizzeria and grow in order to keep his family going. He should let Mary open a pizzeria in the next town, and they can maybe form a co-op to buy their cheese at better prices together. But he should be allowed to he shouldn't have to move up and become a manager of many pizza places. He should be allowed to make his pizza. And
so
that's
this is the crux of it. What do you mean by allowed precisely? What does that mean? Allowed? Allowed by who?
He shouldn't right now, unless your business grows the way you want it to, the way you're saying is so good. Unless the business grows, you go out of business. You should be allowed to stop growing your business at a profitable plateau and run it sustainably. We should be allowed to grow civilization to a sustainable place and run it sustainably. We shouldn't have to mine more stuff to support the derivatives economy. You want to grow more stuff, feed more people, take more marble out of the ground to make more kitchens for people. That's fine if they need kitchens, right? But if I can borrow a drill from Joe and it's fine and I like it, I should be allowed to borrow a drill and not have to buy a drill to support Home Depot.
And just last thing to clarify, it is your position that it is the derivatives economy that requires this growth as opposed to the demands of the consumers for cheaper products and more of them.
Right. There are places in the world that would benefit from economic growth, right? You go to Madagascar as the vanilla trade is collapsing because of climate change. They need to develop to do economic growth, but they grow to the place. You grow to the healthy place, like a forest grows to where it is, and then it doesn't keep growing. Like a human grows to the full grown, and then you're full grown. We should be allowed to have something that's full grown. You right size a business is what it's called, rather than be addicted to perpetual growth.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. This is a very interesting perspective. I really like it, actually.
Cool.
I
Tell
really
people
do.
make them buy my book.
Oh, yes.
Buy this here. Survival of the Richest, Escape Fantasies of the Tech Billionaires. It's about these dudes they're crazy, right? Who are building bunkers and trying to go to Mars and stuff because they believe they're destroying the planet, and they're billionaires.
I mean, I like a good bunker and all, but
Yeah, to visit. Nice place to visit.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm a bit of a soul head economically, but this is a nice complication. I enjoyed it.
Excellent.
So I really appreciate the experience. I don't know if we did not have any more callers. Good. Cool. I didn't look at it, so I wasn't sure. Thank you so much for coming.
All right. Take care. Thank you. Thank everybody for coming. Thank you. It was an honor.
All right, guys. I got stuff.
Is here. Oh, wow. Oh, Marcus. I thought it was Marcuse, but no, sorry.
Thanks, Marcus. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
I got stuff to do, guys, so there's not going to be a super long after show, so this is going to be it for us.